was laundering money for drug cartels, for terrorist groups. There's no question about it. They got caught red-handed. They're the kind of person or kind of entity that this law was written for, trying to stop this. Not for people who are hardworking small businessmen who just happen to be depositing money without any regard, not trying to break the law, not understanding even what the law is, and yet the government takes their entire account. They took $1.9 billion from HSBC. That was less than 1 month's profit for that company. Right. Less than 1 month's profit. If you look at that on an annual basis, that's 8%. That, if you look at that as a tax for them doing business illegally with drug cartels and money launderers, okay, that 8% tax, if you want to call that, the money laundering tax, that's less than their income tax. Of course, they don't pay any income tax anyway, but it's less than a corporation would pay, less than an individual would pay. None of you out there are paying 8% income tax. And so they get away with an 8% tax, even though they were guilty as could be with this.
Right, and that's the other thing, is just not pointing out that the real crime should be here with Hastert. He entered in Congress with a net worth of no more than $270,000 and then exited Congress with somewhere between $4 million and $17 million.
Same thing with the Clintons.
That's a crime. Exactly.
Same thing with the Clintons. Same thing with the Obamas. Okay. Of course, Hillary says when she got out of Congress, they were flat broke.
Oh, yeah.
But so
that's why they had to up their speaking fees.
Yeah. That's the real problem. And I don't think you can stop it. See, campaign finance reform isn't going to get there. This is something that these guys are getting after they get elected. The problem is not campaign finance reform, unfortunately. The problem is that there's so much power in Washington that it is a black hole for criminals. Okay, it's a black hole for these type of people like Dennis Hastert, who they know doesn't have much sense. I mean, this is a guy that the FBI's come to him and asked him why he took out $750,000 and $50,000 increments, and he lies about it. And then he starts trying to structure his deposits. And he should know better because he passed the law.
Exactly.
Okay, if he doesn't know what's in the law, maybe he didn't read it after he passed it.
Right.
You know, he didn't do what Pelosi did, right?
Pass it to find it. Yeah.
Yeah. But of all people, he should know what's in it. So he's not a very bright bulb. Okay. But he's somebody who's crooked. He's corrupt. Somebody that they can control. Okay. So.
Well, and he's obviously been a sociopath and a predator. You know, from his early days as a coach.
Yes.
So
there's a lot we can learn from this, but I hope people will understand the legal corruption, the fallacies underlying civil asset forfeiture and structuring as a crime. Now, Rand Paul and other individuals have co-sponsored this. I can't remember the co-sponsor in the House. They have sponsored now twice what they call the FAIR Act. The FAIR Act would stop civil asset forfeiture, and it would stop the crime, quote unquote, of structuring if it's not being used to hide something that is illegal activity like HSBC. So hopefully that will go through. People need to understand what this is. And let me give you something from Woody Guthrie. This is the guy who wrote This Land Is Your Land, This Land Is Mine. He said, as through this world I've wandered, I've seen lots of funny men. Some will rob you with a 6-gun, some with a fountain pen. Okay? Dennis Hastert is that kind of man. This attorney, Stephen West, this U.S. attorney who is robbing small businesses throughout central North Carolina, is that kind of man. He is nothing but a thief with a fountain pen, and he's not obeying the law. He won't even obey the reform of this unconstitutional act.
Well, and all I could say is hopefully that with this happening right there in Congress as they're trying to figure out if they're going to reauthorize the Patriot Act or not, everyone there can sort of see that they're not above the law, or that they might,
Hey guys, this is Rob Dew. I just wanted to give y'all a quick update on what's going on. We just got contact from Joe Biggs. He's acquired his rental car and is on his way to the site. So I would say 30, 35 minutes he'll be there, depending on traffic, what it's like. We're about 2 hours ahead here in Texas, so it's about 8 o'clock now. So it's, 6 o'clock there. And so just to give everybody an update out who's watching us online on the YouTube stream and on the Infowars.com/show stream and on prisonplanet.tv. All the streams out there. We appreciate everybody watching. Joe Biggs is on his way. We're going to, as soon as he gets there, we'll get a rundown from him of what he sees, what's going on. And I do believe he's going to be open carrying his head down Provectus rifle. So
Good. We'll be able to see it.
he'll be
Hopefully not in
exercising
action.
the Second Amendment there. So
Yeah.
just give you that quick update. David, great breakdown there on the real hidden truth of this Dennis Hastert thing. It's got a lot of angles to it, but I think you've really nailed it.
Well, Rob, I hope that with this, they're still talking about the Patriot Act, as Leanne mentioned, and I hope that people will keep this in mind. People don't understand what's going on. We just saw that with a report from Rex Jones. They don't know what the TPP is. If you asked any of these people what structuring is, they wouldn't know. Businesses don't know. They don't understand how the government is robbing us, and that's really a big part of the problem.
Well, and they think they're above the problem that they're creating for the
they think it's not going to happen to them. But look, no matter, you don't have to have a business. People are getting their cash stolen from them as they're traveling in cars, traveling on trains across this country. Whatever you're carrying, whatever the amount is, it's a big amount to you.
Right.
And actually, people who don't have a lot of money are really in a worse position than someone who has a business that they can use for collateral, because they can hire lawyers to get this back. You don't get a public defender to help you recover your cash when they seize it with civil asset forfeiture, because they say it's not a criminal act, so you don't get a public defender even. So if it's a small amount of money and you're poor, even if you want to do this on the point of principle, you're not going to be able to do it because you're not going to have the money to challenge these people in court.
And also, too, there with the veiled threats that the police are issuing to people that they're confiscating their money. You were mentioning that they were kind of also sending out those same threats to the bankers themselves.
Absolutely. They are going after individuals. They're going after small businesses. They let the big criminals, the big banks like HSBC, who are actually doing criminal money laundering, they let them go with very small penalty. But they're threatening the small banks, just like everything else. It's the small banks are going to come after them. And so there was this conference of anti-money laundering individuals, anti-money laundering and financial crime conference. And this was back in March. And this was the Assistant Attorney General, Caldwell, who went and addressed them. And what he did was he used this occasion to threaten the small banks. And he says that he also talks about a process where they are going after Kleptocracy Asset Recovery Initiative, CARRY. I guess it's kind of like cash and carry, where they go after a foreign government. They say, well, we determined that this foreign government we think is corrupt. So we're going to call it a kleptocracy. And we're going to say that wherever we can get to any states, we're going to just steal them. Okay. Now, of course, they're not going to give it back to the people. They're going to keep it. The U.S. government is going to keep it. They're going to keep it just like law enforcement keeps the stuff that they steal. But that's the whole point. The irony of this is that our government is the biggest kleptocracy on the planet. It is a rule by thieves. That's what these people are doing throughout this. But I want to read to you what he said to these bankers. He said, when the criminal division, that's what he represents, and these are the people that will be trying Dennis Hastert. He said, when the criminal division evaluates a company's compliance policy during an investigation, we don't only look at how the policy reads on paper. We also look at messages that are conveyed to employees, including in-person meetings, emails, telephone calls, compensation. In other words, this is a full-on East German surveillance state, okay, where they're going to look at everything about your business. They're going to complete surveillance of everything. It's not going to be like the privileged people like Hillary Clinton who say they've got a private email server and you can't see that. No, they're going to come in and look at everything in these banks. They say we look at it as a whole, a company that's meaningfully stressed compliance, have they? Or if they're faced in a conflict between compliance and profits, does the company choose profits? In the anti-money laundering and sanctions context in particular, effective compliance requires more. And I'd like to highlight a few points. First, you need to know your customer. In other words, spy incessantly on your customer. Constantly report everything about your customer. And he says, it's not enough just to be filing these reports. We want you to do more reports, and we want you to contact law enforcement completely. They say part of this is information sharing, okay? And he says the second thing is, if this is a foreign bank and they have a U.S. branch, then this foreign bank that happens to have a branch somewhere in the United States, they need to spy on all of their customers in that other country. So if they've got if it's an Irish bank, they want them to spy on all the Irish customers. I know this is an international show. We got a lot of people who watch us from around the world. Here's the point, folks. If you don't live in the United States, make sure you don't do business with a bank that has a branch in the United States, because if you do, the federal government wants that Irish bank, even if you never set foot in the U.S., they want that Irish bank to report everything about you, anything that is suspicious. And then if some federal agency wants to assume that you did something suspicious, they will confiscate your cash, even though you never set foot in the United States. That's the kind of kleptocracy we have. You want a real kleptocracy? It's right here in Washington.
Wow.
And he says the majority of financial institutions file suspicious activity reports, but we encourage those institutions to consider whether to take more action, specifically alert law enforcement authorities about the problem. They may be able to seize funds or initiate an investigation or take other proactive steps. And he goes on to say, you might think this is going to cost you a lot of money to hire all these anti-money laundering personnel. But he said, it may not be a profit center, but an investment will pay off, because if you don't do it, we will come after you, is essentially what he's saying to them.
Wow. So you're investing in not
it's
being investigated.
It's a protection racket. These people are nothing but gangsters. Look at the way this U.S. Attorney, Stephen West, comes to these people. He steals their money. He has no reason to steal their money. And then he says, I'll tell you what, I'll give you back half of it.
Don't get us ratcheted up. No.
Yeah. Don't talk to the press. Don't tell anybody about this. I'll give you half of it back. It's like, you stole this from me. I didn't do anything wrong. And I'm glad these two businesses went out with this. I suspect we just saw these two things pop up all at once. We saw this second one pop up in North Carolina. I suspect the only reason we saw the second one pop up is because of the publicity that the first one got. And I think that now the local news in North Carolina is looking for this. If we make this go national, I bet this is going to be popping up everywhere. This is standard operating procedure. As bad as this is with this particular attorney, Stephen West, this is not something that is just coming out of that one North Carolina office. This is national, and it is international, as I just pointed out. They will steal your money if you live in another country, never set foot in the United States. If your bank, not even a U.S. bank that you're dealing with, but if your foreign bank has a branch in the United States, they can use that to steal your money.
Wow, that's unbelievable. I didn't know about that aspect of the deal at all. And it's important, like you have mentioned, what they really want everyone to focus on is the sexual indiscretions of this man's past. And of course, he's the embodiment of everything that's sleazy there in Washington with that, but that's not what they came after him for. And the issue here is the over-criminalization.
Exactly. We saw that with Waco, if you remember. When they went into Waco, of course, this is something that was already staged. They had the press, they called the press to come and watch what they were going to do. The key word to kick it off was showtime when they attacked the Branch Davidians. But when all of this went south and everything blew up in their face, what they did was they didn't talk about any federal firearms issues that they were coming after him for. Okay, this was the ATF. They were only coming after him. They only had the jurisdiction to come after him for some kind of a firearms problem. They didn't talk about that whatsoever. And of course, it was nothing, again, except some paperwork charges, okay, that he had not paid. What they did was they smeared him with allegations of child abuse, child sex abuse. And when I looked at that, it's like, give me a break. That's not why. Right. It was hard to get information back in that day. We didn't have internet. We had to rely on just billboards that were passing things around. So it was difficult to get information. But when you saw that, you knew there was something wrong. When the government was vilifying these people, saying this is all about child abuse, it's like, if it was about child abuse, the ATF wouldn't have been there with an armed raid. They wouldn't have called the press to come in there. It was simply a beard. And so now they're doing that again. They don't focus on structuring. They don't want you to wake up and understand what's going on with civil asset forfeiture before it happens to you or your family. But you need to wake up. You need to understand what's going on, because it will happen to you. It will happen to people that you know if we don't stop this. Criminal kleptocracy, thieves. And of course, these thieves were put into place by people like Dennis Hastert. So he deserves what he gets, but we don't deserve to be abused by his perversion of the legal system. And that's the key thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, you nailed it right there with that. It makes me want to leave this country, but where would we go? I mean, it seems as though it's
they'll steal your money no matter what country you're in.
Exactly.
So.
I want to talk about a perfect storm today. amazing. And I'm telling you, the spirit, now you can visit headdownproducts.com. It's over the top as usual, but only intensifying. If it was a graph, the incredible over-the-top globalist crimes that are being committed would be going up, straight up, in a parabolic curve. Thank you so much for joining us on this live Sunday, the 31st day of May, 2015. We're just about to be halfway through 2015, 2016, and beyond. I saw some emails and some comments on Thursday and Friday at Infowars.com with trolls saying, you better watch it, claiming Hastard's a pedophile, you crazy conspiracy theorist. None of the media is saying why he was paying somebody allegedly to hush him up. Really, we had an investigative journalist on who documented it and said that they were basically blackmailing him. That's why he was chosen as a wrestling coach to suddenly be run for the State House and then into the House of Representatives and then be made Speaker of the House, even though his tenure was incredibly junior. And now The Hill is talking about Dennis Hastard's weird call from 2014 on C-SPAN when somebody called in and said, remember me, Denny? Well, everybody can eat crow yet again. Here it is in the precious New York Times. Yorkville, where Hastard's taught, is shaken by charges for Denny. Former House Speaker Dennis Hastert accused of hiding sex abuse of former student. You better believe it's students. And this guy is in the club, folks, the Sandusky Club, like the rest of the Republican leadership. Hastert, star wrestler, standing behind indicted mentor, though, so everything's okay. Here's the headline out of CNN. Hastard's hush money was to cover up sexual misconduct with former student, sources say. As if it took the media 3-4 days to figure this out. They all know. Notice Rand Paul is one of the only Republicans saying he won't go along with the Patriot Act, NSA spying. He's set to filibuster tonight. We're going to break all that down today. And that's because I'll guarantee you the worst he's got in his closet is taking hot chicks down to the river as a college student and smoking pot with them and talking about Aqua Buddha. That's it. Smoking pot and taking out cheerleaders. That's all you got. Take the marijuana out of the equation. He's a man after my own heart. But it's just classic. And you add in the wild turkey into the equation in college, and now you're where I was at. And I'm not even defending any of that. It's just they have gone over his record with a fine-tooth comb and can't find anything. And that's why I'm telling you, Rand Paul is the guy. And he's being demonized in the media today from Fox News to CNN because he is good. And that's where I stand on that front. We've got O'Malley announcing that he's going to run against Hillary. Hope he doesn't get on any airplanes soon. But he may just be a ringer, though. So we're going to obviously follow that. He says that leadership is what he's going to bring. How about the Constitution? That'd be nice. Okay, let me just do it this way. It's so over the top. Every day, exponentially, the news gets more insane. I'm not the only one noticing that. Dennis Hastert wasn't rocket science. It's a pedophile cover-up. There's a whole ring up there in Congress, Democrats and Republicans. They recruit their own people in. They go right to the top because they're totally compromised. We're going to play a clip that the Hill newspaper is reporting on where Dennis Hastert's weird 2014 phone call on C-SPAN. We told you on Thursday when it broke and on Friday with the investigative journalist that broke all this in 2006 that Hastert was covering up basically a pedophile ring. So it's not just him having sex with people on the wrestling team, allegedly. And allegedly Bill Clinton's a liar. And allegedly Obamacare increases your prices. No, it's not alleged. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Congress is just chock full of these predators. It's a predator cult. Same cult took over much of the Catholic Church. It'll take over your school. It'll take over your police department. That's how evil operates. So we're going to be breaking all that down. CNN, Hastard's hush money was to cover up sexual misconduct with former students, sources say. Really? Think so? We broke it all here in 2006 on record with Wayne Madsen. And I'm not bragging, but we broke the NSA, we broke the gun grabs, we broke the carbon taxes, we broke it all of it. But not because we're special. The mainstream media lies and deceives on purpose. Their job is to cover up what's really happening until it's too late. Then they try to spin it. And that's why newspaper circulation in just the last 12 months, what they had left is down 50% plus. And hundreds of newspapers are closing as we speak. AFP reports on it. Newspapers struggle to find path in digital age. Well, there are print publications that tell the truth that are also digital that are doing just fine. Look at InfoWars. Well, we're just exploding. Take one look at Hastard and sees a big, giant, pus-filled pedophile. You can take a... Pedophiles have a look, folks. And the way he shot right to the top. But I never went with that until we had the intel and the specifics. And we, again, 9 years ago, broke it all down in an hour-long interview about Hastard and the pedophile ring and the pages and all the rest of it. And this is only coming out now so they can scare the daylights out of Congress to go along with the TPP and all the rest of it, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. You go to drudgereport.com, you can see on the left-hand side, city where Hastard taught, shaken by charges for Denny. It was sex. And you look at the photo from the yearbook of the disgusting creature, and then you understand Barney Frank with his underage callboy ring run out of his 3-story townhouse and no one got in trouble. That came out in the 90s. And the midnight callboy ring over 200 times, underage, quote, callboys. I mean, imagine hundreds of people under 18, men, going to the White House to have sex. That was even the Washington Times. Nobody got in trouble. All these pages they get caught having sex with, male and female, mainly male, both parties. You're like, why is this happening? Because they recruit their people in, and it's a rite of passage that you rape children or you rape young people, and that's how you get into the cult. With the Crips or the Bloods, you got to go shoot a rival gang member, you got to kill a liquor store owner, you got to shoot at a cop. To really become a made member of hardcore gangs. And I think that's disgusting, you know, shooting a cop, killing a liquor store owner, whatever. But, man, I got to say, it's not as sick as, like, having a pedo cult. It's all sick. I mean, you know, it's by degrees, but, I mean, it's really sick. And that's who runs America. You wonder why stuff's so twisted? Why Jocelyn Elders got up during the Clinton administration and said, you know, teach 5-year-olds how to masturbate? Reach down and help the little fellows. That creepy voice, a woman in an admiral outfit. These are freaks, folks. These are sickos. And they get up there on MSNBC, and they tell you, your kids belong to the state now. Remember that promo? Melissa Harris Perry? It's all about outrageousness. We're going to teach your 5-year-olds that Bobby has 2 daddies. And it's not to teach so you don't hate people. It's to get little kids all screwed up, thinking about stuff that it shouldn't even be on their radar till they're 18 years old. California says, we'll inoculate your kids without your consent if we get their consent down to age 11. Children don't have consent till 18. There's a reason, because sick freaks can convince them. What's next? That's right. England and Australia are trying to pass laws that down to age 12 or 13, depending on the country, if your child gives consent, let me tell you somebody. You go after one of my daughters when they're 13, and I've got one that's 11, and you say you had consent, you're some 30-year-old pervert, I don't care what the law is, you're going to be pushing daisies. And, oh, but then I'll be a pedophobe. In fact, that's already starting, see? Let some old man love my 7-year-old daughter. I got a 7-year-old daughter. You know what? A ball-peen hammer is going to love your head when I knock you upside the head about 100 times. I'm sick of it. I don't belong to you. My children don't belong to you, you control freak sacks of pus. Now, let's go ahead and play a little call that the Hill newspaper is reporting on from last year to Denny Hastert. Denny, who was taken from nowhere and put in the State House and then brought right in and was only in Congress 3 or 4 years before he's in leadership. And then a few years after that, he's the speaker. Unheard of. Let's go ahead and go to that clip.
Illinois is our next call. Here's Bruce, Independent Line. Hi.
Hello, Danny.
Hey, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Remember me from Yorkville?
Bruce, you're on. Go ahead with
Yeah,
your question or
go
comment. I think he's gone.
And see, they had to burn Hastert because they can't have the whole ring come out. Just like they sent the former head of the FBI to cover up Penn State, that's basically one of the major pedophile command bases. And it'll all come out just like the Vatican. None of you guys are going to stop any of it. You know, this year they called it 2 months ago national security. The Prime Minister of England said it's now a national security emergency and that they have to basically seal the pedophile scandal because of national security, because it goes from the royal family right through Parliament, right into local government. You say, statistically, maybe only 1 out of 200 people, if you look at the criminology, is a pedophile. Why are they seem to be every other person in government worldwide? Because it's a cult, people. Rome got taken over by perv cults. You know, during the Stoic rise of Rome, when they stopped having kings, and we're talking 200 BC or so, in the golden age of Rome, if you cheated on your wife, they would execute you. And you know why? Because they'd already been through all the decadence and their society collapsed. So then that's where the word Stoic comes from, is the Romans. Then, by their fall, what are they doing? All the same stuff we see now. And what architecture is D.C.? It's Romanesque. The whole thing is classical, not Greek, but Roman architecture from the Greek. And they're just up there in a big Caligula Nero party, out of touch, but this time they've got nuclear weapons. It's not like Rome can just fall this time. It's got nuclear weapons. It's run by crazy people. And you got to ask, why is it coming out now? To blackmail Congress. I want to talk about a perfect storm today. And the perfect storm I'm going to discuss is a really good perfect storm. I have
Our universe might be a Matrix-like computer game designed by aliens. Now, this was a theory that was first proposed by a British philosopher, Nick Bostrom, just a few years after the Matrix film was released. So, of course, he could have been influenced by the film, who knows. But in his paper, Dr. Bostrom suggests that a race of far-evolved descendants could be behind our digital imprisonment. These futuristic beings, whether they be human or otherwise, could be using virtual reality to stimulate a time in the past or trying to recreate how their remote ancestors lived. So I know that might sound crazy, but NASA actually thinks that he could be right. Now, this is according to Rich Turrill. He is the director of the Center for Evolutionary Computation and Automated Design at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He says that in quantum mechanics, particles do not have a definite state unless they're being observed. One explanation is that we're living within a simulation, seeing what we need to see when we need to see it. And he said he still finds it inspiring that even if we are living in some sort of a simulation, many orders of magnitude down in levels of simulation, somewhere along the way, something escaped the primordial ooze to become us and to result in simulations that made us. And so he thinks that that's cool. Well, I don't want to go into too deep of what that might possibly be. David Icke was actually on the Alex Jones show and talked a little bit about what might be behind this digital enslavement. But if you think that virtual reality and living in a simulation is just too far off, totally unreal, well, that is exactly what the United States government has been working on. Not just where people are and what they are doing, but what and how they think. So this was many years ago, PBS Nova. It's, they're not huge conspiracy theorists, but think back then, 2009, smart homes and smart tracking apps weren't as prevalent as they are today. So all of this technology, we're basically helping to build our own digital imprisonment. But another AI program, Sentient World Simulation. This was proposed in 2006 and has largely flown under the radar. Sentient World Simulation is a matrix-like reality simulating humanity. It is a mirror model of the real world running in parallel on a computer, and it's designed to predict and evaluate future events and courses of action. SWS provides an environment for testing psychological operations and civil affairs activities. It's capable of illustrating the impact of these activities on populations. So in a parallel world, the Pentagon is running an AI program to see how people will react to propaganda and government-inflicted terror. So they can yank a country's water supply or stage a military coup and see how people are going to react. Now, the military through all of this is seeking to gain full spectrum picture of the everyday reality of people's lives and, of course, the adversaries of the military. So that's why they're tracking protesters and vegan potlucks and the Occupy protests and things like that, because they're wanting to see not only who are terrorists, but people who are actively trying to maybe overthrow the world order. So with this upcoming Jade Helm, is this just a drill? Will soldiers be in place to test capabilities? Are they wargaming some potential humanitarian emergency scenarios, responding to civil unrest? We did report last year how the U.S. Department of Defense put out a Fed BizOp request for an even more game-changing technology to predict societal unrest. They were looking to find some technology that would help them to track all human activities that can be measured. David Knight and Rob Dew gave a really in-depth presentation of a whole nother level of geospatial simulation and how this is tying into Jade Helm.
They are mapping humans onto the geological map, and they're looking at you at the individual level, every aspect of you. This is where the surveillance pays off for them. This is the GeoInt, the human domain. And when they say mastering the human domain, it's a very specific term of art from the military.
And this has been an evolution. It started off as we're going to get real detailed maps of everything using satellite imagery. Well, now they have these detailed maps. Now they know who lives at what address. And now they're tying that in with your Facebook account, with your Twitter account,
Yes.
with your YouTube videos. So they're measuring your political beliefs, and they can go up and down and go, well, he's kind of for us. This guy's against us. This guy's pulling the party line. This guy isn't. We need to put him on a watch list. And they're using all this for future operations.
They're building an infrastructure of tyranny.
Right.
There's a legal infrastructure, things like the NDAA. There is a technical infrastructure, things like the capabilities to do dragnet surveillance. And then, of course, there's going to be a military and a law enforcement infrastructure. Those are merging. That's what you have to understand when they talk about the human domain, when they talk about geointelligence, mapping this all together. They're multi-int, taking all of this, multiple intelligence sources, focusing it down to the micro level. They're very concerned, they say in these presentations, they're very concerned about one guy with a computer and a video camera because he can have worldwide impact. That's why they're looking at you as an individual.
Exactly. And now I want to go to this first clip. This is Lieutenant Colonel Al DiLeonardo. This is from the Master of the Human Domain 2010 GeoInt Conference. And he used to run a fusion cell for U.S. Special Forces. Okay, so this is not some ordinary guy.
Hey, just like that's the bottom of the Jade Helm logo, Master of the Human Domain.
The cell's objectives were to use as much non-traditional data from an Intel standpoint. That means a lot of open source data. To go out and do sense making of data so that not only your analysts, but your machine learning, your algorithms you could build would ultimately get to a predictive analysis cell. It's very, very hard to do, especially if you don't have all the data. Basically, old data is good data, new data is good data, and all data is good.
I want it
In
all.
the context of how I view
Total
human
information
terrain,
awareness.
Yeah.
somewhat controversial in some aspects, is it's socio information, and it becomes, when used in intelligence purposes or for sense making for operations, when you bring it to the GeoInt, and I don't mean to be coy in saying that, when you bring GeoInt to it, I think it becomes human terrain. You have to reach out and have
Human
the people
terrain.
using traditional, non-traditional data sets, as you see there
That's how
further
they're
to the
mapping
right.
there.
There's
And
multiple
ultimately, as
layers.
you bring in Esri products in GeoInt, you get outputs as unclassified examples there of different layers that you would make. It's that open source combined with the classified information, combined with the now, the old and the now, that begins to give you the layers you can make to make sense of what's really going on.
Celebrate the spirit of freedom and liberty upon which our nation was founded at InfoWarsShop.com. Molon Lave is ancient Greek for come and take it. This popular design combines both classic Greek Spartan imagery with modern M16 assault rifles. Now available in women's tees and proudly made in the USA. And now you can protect yourself from corrupt cops with the InfoWars dash cam. It's your car's black box.